I was checking the games of the European Team Chess Championship round 7 when I came across a brilliant game, or let's say at least a very interesting position. And what appealed to me was that white was material down. It was only 1 point, but all the white pieces were dominating. Theodora Inyach playing the white pieces decides to go knight to f3, and Eileen Roberts playing the black pieces decides to do the same thing and play knight to f6. White plays c4, an invitation to play some English or symmetrical English after c5. However, black had other plans. She played g6, probably a hint that she wants to go into some sort of King's Indian type of structure. White plays g3, bishop to g7 by black, bishop g2, black castles, white castles, and now d6, probably revealing the intention that black is happy about a King's Indian structure. Now white could just play something like d4 and indeed go into a King's Indian position, one of the main lines, the fianchetto variation. However, she had other plans. Theodora Inyach decided to play knight to c3 and black plays e5. c5 was another playable move, but this would be more sort of an symmetrical English rather than a King's Indian. So after e5, white still has the chance to go for d4 and get into a King's Indian type or a King's Indian structure, one of the main lines, one of the absolute main lines. But she decides to play d3, and these structures are usually called the King's English because it's not really a King's Indian. The Indian games are usually against c4, d4, but here white did play d3 instead of d4, so no King's Indian, but a King's English. Black plays knight to c6, and the idea here is to cover this b4 square. Rook to b1 still. White wants to play b4 and plays rook b1, intending to play b4 in the next move. Black wants to avoid the expansion on the queen side for now, so she plays a5, controlling the b4 square one more time. And now a very typical move would be a3, and white would be able to play b4 and gain space on the queen side, but at which cost? Well, then the a file would open, because the a pawn would take the b pawn, and then the a pawn would take the b pawn, and white got the b4 pawn in the end, but black has the a file, so has some compensation, and the position would be around equal. For example, rook e8, bishop g5 would be an alternative. Now h6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, knight to d2 or b4. There are many different variations of this b4 idea, as you can see. You could also just go b4, which would be also fine, as mentioned earlier, but black controls the a file, and the position is maybe slightly better for white or equal. Probably more equal than better for white. But white had a very interesting idea in mind, and this is the b3 move. And this move is played by grandmasters indeed. And it looks harmless, but it's not. While you might think that the bishop is heading towards b2, you might be very wrong, because the a3 square is now also available for the bishop. So watch out for these kind of ideas. And now black decided to play a move which is not typical for such structures. She played knight to h5, clearly showing the desire to play f5. And this is a very typical idea in the King's Indian opening or defense. But with g3 being played, usually f5 tends to be a little bit weaker, especially if you prepared with knight to h5, because the f4 square is covered well. White responded with e4, and all the moves were played very quickly, so probably both sides were prepared. Now black plays f5, manages to play f5, and the position is okay. Now the question, as always for white, is shall she take on f5 or not? And she decides to take. But what were the alternatives? Well, one of the biggest alternatives usually is bishop to g5. But then a move like bishop to f6 might be just good enough, and the position is okay for black. Why not? So white takes on f5, and this position has still occurred in some grandmaster games, and bishop takes f5 would be the normal response. However, in the game, Eileen Roberts decided to take with the g-pawn, and this was not very accurate. White has a very easy way to play here, and this is just to play d4, and it's obvious that white is better here because e4 runs into knight to h4, and now we see this knight on h5 isn't well defended, needs to go back, and white is already much better here. So this is not working. Other moves don't work either, probably, so the knight has to retreat to f6, and then white is free to take on e5 once, and then exchange queens, and this will favor white, of course, because of the weak c7 square, or pawn, to be more precise, the c7 pawn. So this had been a good idea, but white found a very nice way to play, and this is knight to h4, also guaranteeing advantage, and now we will see the idea. Knight to f6 played because the knight again was under attack by the queen. The knight goes back, and now comes white's idea. f4, opening up the diagonal, but this will serve white more than black. Knight to e7, so black hesitates with taking on f4 for very good reasons. If she had taken on f4, then simply bishop takes f4, the bishop developed itself with regaining the pawn, and white is very happy. So knight to e7 played, and now white could have just taken on e5, d takes e5, and white is better. However, in the game, knight to e2 was played, another excellent move. c6 played, trying to contain this bishop. But now a move like bishop to a3 might be very strong. But white found even a better way to play it. She first played h3. Now followed knight to e8, and now bishop to a3. White's pieces are placed well compared to black's pieces. Well, black's pieces don't look so prosperous, so a very difficult position. And black already had to find a move like rook to f7, a typical move for kings in Indian positions, but hard to find at the right time. So instead, black played bishop to e6, and now followed king to h2. White could also take on e5 and play d4 here, and after e4 the position is just much better for white because white can already play d5. Taking on d5 doesn't really work. Bishop takes doesn't really work because of bishop takes e7, deflecting the queen, so the bishop is on pre, and white is winning. An entire piece up for a pawn, not very good. So this would work out. However, white played king to h2, a very solid move. Queen to d7 played, and now the knight on h4, which doesn't look very active, just drops back to f3. A very clever move by white, excuse me. King to h8, f takes e5, d takes e5, and now d4. And as said, this e4 move almost never works, but now black is already forced to play it, so the position is already pretty bad. White now has the very beautiful knight to e5 move, and this can really not be taken because the position of black is just collapsing. The black squares are incredibly weak. And these pieces here don't look good either. This pawn, there might be g4 at any point. So the position isn't good. So queen to c7 played, trying to maintain the pieces. But now comes knight to f4. A very active move, improving the knight. And now the queen is heading towards h5. And the knight is also attacking e6. How do you defend? Eileen Roberts found a very nice move, or at least nicely looking move. Rook to f6. Then followed queen to h5. And now it is your turn. Does rook h6 here work or doesn't it work? And why? Try to find a good move. Now it is your turn, and then let me know in the comment section what you had played here. In the game, Theodora Inyach found the very beautiful queen takes h6 with only 1 minute of thinking. So she had seen this move a long time ago. Bishop takes h6. So white is down a queen for a rook, but also gets the knight on e6, which was protected by the rook. So now it's a knight and the rook, or a bishop and the rook for the queen. And the queen has to move. Queen to c8, and now we see the idea of white. It was knight to f7 check. The king has only one square to go, and this is the g8 square. Then follows knight to h6 check. King to h8. And now again it is your turn. What would you play here? And this is really the point. Theodora Inyach found the very beautiful d5. Simple and beautiful. And black already resigned here, gave up. And it was really time to call it a day for black, because a move like knight to f6 would lose due to bishop to b2, and black can't do anything. Let's say knight eg8, then simply knight f7 mate. Other moves like queen f8 also don't work out because the queen is on pre. The rook takes, and now just d6, the knight has to move. Let's say knight eg8, and now the knight takes on f5. And this pawn is hanging because this knight is still pinned. A brilliant game by Theodora Inyach for the Serbian team. Let me know what you think about this game. Did you expect queen takes h6? The point of this game probably. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and the video next to me might be a really nice watch if you like this video. Feel free to subscribe, and see you the next time. Bye.